June 9, 1991 will forever be remembered as a day of unspeakable horror and tragedy at Kings Island Amusement Park in Cincinnati, Ohio. That day, two of the most bizarre and chilling accidents in American amusement park history occurred, leaving a trail of death and destruction in their wake. Within the space of an hour, 3 individuals lost their lives, while another was left fighting for the one he barely had remaining. This wasn't just a coincidence or a stroke of bad luck. No, something much darker was at play that day. In this bone-chilling video, we delve deep into the shocking events of that fateful day and examine the eerie coincidences and strange happenings surrounding it while we reveal the terrifying truth about what really happened. This is not a story for the faint of heart, but for those brave enough to bear witness. Located 24 miles northeast of Cincinnati, in Mason, Ohio, USA, Cedar Fair's Kings Island is one of America's largest and most popular amusement parks. Boasting an impressive 364 acres in size, the park first opened in 1972 as part of a larger project to relocate and expand Coney Island, a popular tourist destination located on the banks of the Ohio River that was frequently flooded. With over 100 attractions and shows available, including 14 roller coasters and a 33-acre water park, Kings Island has been featured in several comedies and sitcoms, and its record-breaking attractions and events have been widely publicized. But behind the excitement and fun lies a dark and chilling history, marred by tragedy and horror. And on June 9, 1991, that dark history would be forever etched into the memories of all those present. The first accident that took place that day happened at around 9:00 p.m. when 22-year-old Timothy Benning and his friend, 20-year-old William Heathcote, were enjoying themselves in the Oktoberfest zone of the park. The area is themed after Oktoberfest, the world's largest annual festival held in Germany, featuring a beer festival and a traveling carnival. It was a lively zone full of music, activities, and games, as well as enough beer and food to leave any beer lover happy. The friends were enjoying themselves, and they had no idea that a harmless prank would soon lead to disaster. At some point, the two friends were passing by an artificial pond with a fountain in the middle, when Timothy thought it would be a brilliant idea to playfully splash some water from the pond at William. It's something we've probably all done at some point: splash a bit of water on your friends and get a good laugh at their reaction. What Timothy didn't know, however, was that at that exact moment, a wire which usually ran below the pond was now exposed, electrifying the water with some powerful currents. His prank was about to go horribly wrong. As he put his hand in the water, he was immediately shocked by the strong electrical current. The sheer impact of the jolt knocked him unconscious, causing him to tumble over the railing that surrounded the pond and eventually fall into the charged water. At this point, his friend William panicked and probably thought that he had just fell in the water and hit his head or something. It did not occur to him that the water could be dangerous. So naturally he did what any good friend would do and immediately jumped into the pond to try and save his buddy. He too was electrocuted and rendered unconscious once he hit the water. After William was knocked out, Darrell Robertson, a nearby 20-year-old park employee who saw what had happened, rushed to help. Like the two friends, he was also unaware that the root cause of the problem was a faulty exposed wire in the pond. And so he also jumped into the water and met the same fate. At this point, people began to notice what was happening over at the pond. Some started to scream as they saw the bodies of the 3 men unconscious in the shallow pool, while others frantically dialed 911. One of the guests finally figured out that the pond was electrified. He quickly warned the other guests to stay away from it, then grabbed a nearby garbage bin and tried to reach out to the 3 men without touching the water. Other people present at the scene joined in the dangerous rescue, and soon the 3 unconscious men were taken out of the deadly pond. A nurse who was present at the scene immediately started rendering first aid to the 3 men, but it was already too late. Darrell and William were already dead, electrocuted by the water. Timothy miraculously survived, and he was taken to a nearby hospital, the Bethesda North Hospital in Cincinnati, where he slowly recovered. Autopsy examinations conducted on the 2 men who died concluded that William died from the electric shock, while Darrell died by drowning after the electric shock rendered him unconscious. Timothy would later go on to blame himself for the accident and wish he had died instead. Survivor's guilt hit him hard, and understandably so. How could he come to terms with the fact that his best friend and a total stranger both died because of what was supposed to be a gag? It would take him many years to forgive himself, but nevertheless, his family and the families of the other victims assured him that they did not blame him because, to them, he had done nothing wrong and was just fooling around. Subsequent investigations revealed that the incident would have been avoided altogether if a simple circuit breaker had been installed on the electrical wiring under the pond. It had even taken them a while to relate the accident to the wiring beneath the pond. The park was eventually blamed for not having a proper system in place to prevent faulty wires from turning water ponds and pools into death traps. Meanwhile, at another location in the park on the same day, a second accident was brewing and would occur barely an hour after the first. This time, it involved a 32-year-old woman named Candy Taylor and one of the park's notable roller coasters, the Flight Commander. The Flight Commander roller coaster ride was an experience like no other. With 22-person pods or capsules that circled the tower and joysticks in the capsules, riders could raise, lower, and flip their vehicles while at heights of up to 60 feet. It was an exhilarating ride, but on that fateful day, it became a loaded gun. Candy, who was at the park with two of her friends, was initially supposed to get on the ride with her friends. However, because she was having a drink, she opted to wait and board the ride alone after finishing. The nightmare began after this simple decision that unfortunately sealed her fate. As soon as Taylor finally boarded the ride, she made a fatal mistake. She sat in the pod alone. This was against the ride safety guidelines, and the operator should have prevented her from doing so, but for some unknown reason, they didn't. And to make matters worse, the operator didn't fasten the restraints of the empty seats beside her. Just a few minutes after the ride started to rotate, tragedy struck. Taylor slipped from her pod and fell an astonishing 60 feet to the ground. To put that into perspective, 60 feet is the rough equivalent of a 5 or 6-story building. Imagine falling from that height and from a fast-moving roller coaster nonetheless. Candy Taylor never had a chance of surviving that fall. Chillingly, police officers, detectives, and firefighters who were responding to the first incident were still present in the park when the 911 emergency dispatcher informed them that another deadly incident had just taken place in the park. They rushed to the scene only to find Taylor's battered and severely injured body. She was immediately rushed to a hospital in Dayton, where she was declared dead. The investigations that followed revealed that Taylor had a blood alcohol level that was 3 times over the legal limit to drive. She was practically drunk with a blood alcohol level of 0.30. It's possible that she passed out in the pod due to intoxication, making her unable to safeguard herself or hold on to the handguards properly while in the pod. Ultimately, the accident was blamed on the fact that she was riding alone in a pod that was meant for multiple people. Some theories also assume that the reason Taylor slipped out of the pod and fell was that she wanted to take a look at the medical helicopters ferrying the electrocution victim, Timothy Benning, to the hospital, and that if she only knew it would lead to her death, she may have reined in her curiosity and saved herself. Later, Taylor's family would file lawsuits for punitive damages as well as wrongful death and other compensations against both the amusement park and the ride manufacturer, Intamin. However, they all reached an out-of-court settlement, and the family would later decide to drop the charges. That fateful day would later become known as Black Sunday because of the bizarre events that occurred in Kings Island Amusement Park. The town, the park, and the visitors had all experienced a truly mysterious and shocking day. The accidents had occurred within 200 yards of one another and within the same hour, like an eerie coincidence. Even more unbelievable was the fact that the amusement park had been operating for 19 years without a single fatal incident until 2 bizarre events took place on that one day. This made it seem like the park was being targeted by some supernatural force or just plain bad luck. Kings Island would later install a seat divider on the flight commander's pods and also extend the length of the safety bars in order to prevent a repeat of the accidents that had occurred. In addition to this, they installed a failsafe that would prevent riders from being able to use the joystick in their pod if their restraints were not properly locked in. Although it is quite tragic that people had to perish before the park made the obviously necessary adjustments, the park would continue to operate as one of the safest and most popular amusement parks in the United States.